Brian, welcome to Speaker Spotlight.
Happy to be here.
It's great to speak to you, and you're a real advocate. I remember writing about your work in my dissertation in university with your work with dyscalculia. So, can you tell us a little about, for people who aren't aware of your work, I'm sure they are, a bit about you?
Well, I got into dyscalculia, at least developmental dyscalculia, kind of by chance, like most things in most people's lives. So I was a practicing neuropsychologist. So I would see patients in a neurological clinic who had various problems. And one of the problems that stood out for me was perfectly intelligent men and women who could no longer do even simple calculations after having had a stroke or some other brain damage. And I wondered which parts of the brain were involved here. And it always seemed to be the left parietal lobe, which is about there, for me anyway. And so this wasn't a discovery. People had known about this for 80 or 90 years, that the left parietal lobe was important. But I started to wonder whether um, this came about through the process of training or education, or whether we were born with part of the brain that was designed to be relevant to numbers and arithmetic. And so I started to think about how this part of the brain develops and whether this development can go wrong. And that's how I got into dyscalculia, where this part of the brain does indeed have a slightly abnormal developmental trajectory.
And I think that's the thing. Dyscalculia is still so, even though we know it's a neurodiversity condition, it's still that lack of understanding that's there. A lot of people think, oh, do you mean dyslexia when you say dyscalculia, or they say it's maths anxiety, or it's just, I hate to say it, bad at maths, but actually it is a serious condition that's very under-recognised.
Yeah, I'm afraid it's very under-recognized. There's no official definition in the United Kingdom. They're beginning to get one in Scotland, and some countries have it in their official legal code, for example, in the United States and in Italy, though I'm not sure that it's in the legal code anywhere else at the moment. So this is one of the campaigns that we work on to try and get legally recognized.
And it's so important that people like yourself, Kat Edel, Rob Jennings, are doing such an amazing job promoting dyscalculia, raising that awareness that's there. But for somebody who might have heard of it but not fully know what it is, Brian, what exactly is dyscalculia? If you could summarize it, what would you say it is?
Well, it's not being bad at maths, because some of the dyscalculics we've tested can be quite good at other branches of mathematics and can be very good at other branches of mathematics, but not good at number and simple arithmetic. So you can be really good at tensor calculus, which are really complicated and I don't know it, but you have trouble with 9+6. So it's really just about numbers. So you've got a kind of blind spot when it comes to numbers and simple arithmetic. In fact, one of the people that we've tested in the lab actually got the equivalent of GCSE maths because he happened to be very good at geometry. And so he managed just to scrape a pass because his geometry was good. So it's just about numbers and mathematics. And this is the part, and this is where the left parietal lobe comes in. It's also the right parietal lobe. So exactly what these two parts of the brain do differently is not yet completely clear.
Child has dyscalculia, or you might be dyscalculic yourself, you might be an adult. I think I've always had these difficulties, but it's always been passed as dyslexia, or it's, I hate to say it again, that you're just bad at maths. I've always struggled at it. What would you suggest, Brian, would be the next steps, like, to explore, get potentially get a diagnosis?
I'm a devotee of a former colleague of mine, alas, no longer with us, called Dorian Yeo, who, with Jane Emerson, set up Emerson House to help kids with dyscalculia as well as dyslexia. And Dorian was a wonderful teacher of kids with dyscalculia. And she and I produced a book called Dyscalculia Guidance, laying out how you should help kids in a step-by-step manner. Now, uh, since that time, we've developed some digital games, which we think will help dyscalculics. In a sense, what we've done is turn Dorian's approach into digital form. I might call it digital Dorian. And we've tried this out in many countries now. We've tried it out in London, in Italy, in Argentina, and most recently in Singapore. And we find that this one particular game is really helpful for kids who are struggling with arithmetic, not just dyscalculics, but any early learners who are struggling with arithmetic. They find the games that we've developed really, really helpful.
And Brian, you're involved with the Dyscalculia Show at the event in March. Can you tell us a bit about what you'll be working on?
Well, I'll be really trying to do two things. First of all, to show that dyscalculia isn't just being bad at maths. So if you compare countries, what you find is that somewhere like the Dominican Republic has probably 90% of its population who are bad at maths, 90% of its population. If you look at somewhere like Singapore, it's about 10% who are bad at arithmetic. And you look at somewhere like the United Kingdom, it's maybe 15 to 20% who are bad at arithmetic. Now, being bad at arithmetic obviously isn't a clinical diagnosis. So what you have to do is find out why these kids are bad at arithmetic, even in countries like Singapore, where we have worked. And the reason is that we think that we're born with an innate system for representing the number of things that you see or experience in other ways. And something's gone wrong with that system. And it's this system that provides the basis for learning arithmetic in school. So if this system isn't working properly, you're going to have an awful lot of trouble learning arithmetic. You're going to avoid thinking about arithmetic. You're going to avoid arithmetic lessons. So you're going to get worse and worse in unfortunate circumstances unless you get some special help. So there's some very specific thing that goes wrong in dyscalculia. So it's not just, being bad at arithmetic because, if you're unlucky enough to be born in the Dominican Republic, the chances are you're going to be bad at arithmetic. So it's really something very specific. And it's extremely easy to test.
Insightful for people attending the Dyscalculia Talk Show and hearing this talk, hearing this research, whether they're assessors wanting to get more information, educators. It's that knowledge and that research that they're really going to pass forward and help people potentially with dyscalculia.
Well, what I'm hoping is that angry parents and teachers will create pressure on the government, first of all, to provide official recognition of the condition, and secondly, to provide support for learners who have this difficulty. So this could be an important meeting from that point of view.
It's going to be so amazing, the Dyscalculia Show, and with speakers like yourself, Brian. It's going to be, I can't recommend that people attend, and they're going to benefit from it so much, whether you're a parent, educator, even if you just want to learn more about dyscalculia. So in the meantime, Brian, where can people find about your work in the meantime from now on the show?
Well, if you just look me up on using Google, you'll find a few videos that I've made, particularly for number file, number PHILE, number file. I've made a few for them on dyscalculia and on how the brain deals with numbers more generally. So that's, if you like, a painless introduction. You can also find some of my written work online. There are also books. There's a book I wrote called Dyscalculia from Science to Education, which tells you about the science, but also how it relates to educational practice, best ways of assessing individuals for dyscalculia, and the best ways of helping them if they've got dyscalculia.